Welcome to the Deep Dive, the place where we take a massive stack of sources and distill it down into the knowledge you need to be the most informed person in the room.
We are diving deep today into a really critical shift in the real estate profession. You know, most people think getting their license, well, that's the end of the educational road.
Right. Pass the test, get the paper, start earning.
Exactly. But what our sources are telling us loud and clear is that for the truly successful pros, the ones building real wealth, licensing is just stepping onto the track. It's only the beginning.
Yeah, that's our mission today. We want to explore that whole idea of continuous learning, how you shift from just being, licensed to practice, to becoming a genuine expert, an entrepreneur, and really importantly, an investor. We're pulling from some deep sources here, stuff on advanced investment strategy, running things efficiently, even sales psychology. How does that constant learning actually build long-term wealth?
And that's the key payoff, isn't it? That financial transformation. I mean, yeah, it helps you serve clients better. That's great, of course.
Sure.
But our sources really hammer home this difference, the difference between being rich and having actual financial wealth. Education has to bridge that gap.
Okay, tell us more about that. Rich versus wealthy. Sounds simple, but feels important for this whole discussion.
It is foundational. Being rich, that usually means a high income. You make good money, maybe as a top agent, but the minute you stop working...
The money stops.
Precisely. You still have a job, essentially. Now, financial wealth, that means you own assets. Things like cash-flowing real estate, businesses, investments, stuff that generates money for you, whether you clock in that day or not.
So it's about owning the income stream, not just earning it.
That's it, exactly. And this deep dive is all about using education to build the know-how, the systems, the assets you need to make that shift from job dependency to, well, financial freedom. You have to learn how to own it.
Okay, let's start with the mindset then. The belief system you need. We're not just talking about, reading a few articles here and there.
No. This is about a real commitment. Committing to becoming an absolute expert. One source actually calls it becoming a black belt investor.
I like that. Black belt investor. What does that imply?
It emphasizes mastery, right? Not just knowing stuff, but repetition, discipline, sticking with it. The core idea is pretty straightforward, but you have to really buy into it. The effort you pour into learning advanced real estate investing, it pays back exponentially.
So it's about building capability.
Yes. Becoming that black belt means you're capable of creating and, crucially, maintaining life-changing wealth. And that doesn't happen by accident. It's earned through consistent, rigorous learning.
Then when you compare the learning investment needed here
Yeah.
versus other paths, it seems pretty compelling. Our sources suggest, real estate investing needs a bit more specialized knowledge than maybe just basic stock market stuff.
Right, like passive index funds, that sort of thing.
But compared to, say, launching a whole new business from scratch, like a big restaurant or some tech startup,
Oh, it's much less daunting. The barrier to entry for active real estate investing, while real, is generally lower than complex entrepreneurship, but the potential upside, often far greater.
how so?
Well, you get potentially fantastic rates of return. We can dig into the numbers later, and this is huge, significant tax advantages. Depreciation, write-offs, things you just don't get from regular W-2 income or standard stock dividends.
Yeah.
That learning curve, it's completely justified by the wealth you can build sustainably.
This really brings us to a core idea in the sources.
Okay.
Financial aptitude. And maybe more importantly, the lack of it, even among really successful people. Why do we see doctors, lawyers, top performers struggling financially sometimes?
It's all about what traditional education focuses on. School teaches you how to make money, right? How to be a great surgeon or a sharp lawyer or a top-selling agent, professional success. But it almost never teaches financial aptitude.
Which you define as?
Financial aptitude is the skill set for managing money. How to keep more of it, how to protect it, and critically, how to make that money work hard for you. You can earn hundreds of thousands a year and still be, frankly, financially illiterate if you don't grasp cash flow, assets, leverage.
So they work hard, but their money's just sitting there.
Pretty much. It's lazy money. The shift we're talking about is moving from being a highly paid worker to becoming a smart asset owner, where your money is out there, generating more money, ideally passively.
Okay, so once you've got that mindset shift, that commitment to aptitude, the next strategic move is focus, right? Niche specialization.
Absolutely critical if you want to accelerate that expert status. You can't be an expert in everything. You need to narrow it down radically.
Like how? Give us an example.
Okay, Maybe you decide you're only going to focus on single-family homes, say between $300,000 and $400,000. Or maybe even tighter, you focus on just 2 or 3 specific neighborhoods. That's it.
And the benefit of that tight focus.
Speed and confidence. When a really good deal pops up in your niche, and good deals often move fast, you already know the market inside out. You know the values, the rental rates, the quirks of that specific area. You can analyze it and say yes, sometimes in hours.
While the generalist is still trying to pull comps?
Exactly. You're already making an offer while they're just getting started. And this expertise, it gets really granular.
Beyond just bedrooms and square footage.
Oh, yeah. It's knowing things like, okay, in this particular neighborhood, vaulted ceilings add, say, $15,000 in value to an older ranch home. But maybe 2 blocks over, in that neighborhood, it's really desirable landscaping that moves the needle. That deep, almost intuitive pricing knowledge lets you spot value, negotiate effectively, and act decisively. That's the investor's edge.
All right, so the mindset's there, the focus is narrowed. The next big educational piece seems to be about execution, operationalizing success. Real estate sales, as we know, can be chaotic.
Understatement of the year. Yeah, you're constantly getting pulled every which way. Calls, emails, showings, closings, problems. It's so easy for time to just evaporate. You end up reacting all day.
Instead of being intentional.
Exactly. Reactive chaos is the absolute enemy of building wealth or a scalable business. Intentionality is the weapon against it. You have to consciously choose where your time and energy go, focusing on activities that actually align with your big goals, your vision, and spend way less time on the low-level busy work.
So where do you start with that? The sources seem pretty emphatic about planning.
Non-negotiable first step. Plan tomorrow, today. And critically, this isn't just thinking about it.
Has to be written down.
Has to be. The stats are kind of shocking, actually. A plan that just stays in your head. You're apparently 60, maybe even 80% less likely to actually do it compared to a written plan you've thought through and reviewed. Writing it down forces clarity and commitment.
Okay, so you've got a written plan. How do you structure your time to actually do the important stuff? The sources talk about the 12-week year framework.
Yeah, that's a really powerful system for high performance.
Yeah.
It relies on these 3 core types of time block that you absolutely have to schedule. Non-negotiable. They are strategic blocks, buffer blocks, and breakout blocks.
And these aren't for client stuff, right? This is time for you and the business.
Correct. Let's break down the strategic block first, because that's probably the most critical for growth.
Okay.
A strategic block is a dedicated chunk of time, ideally maybe 3 hours long, scheduled early in the week when your energy is typically highest. And the purpose is to work on your business, not just in it.
Explain that difference on versus in.
Working in the business is the day-to-day stuff. Answering client calls, going to showings, writing offers, putting out fires. Necessary, but it doesn't grow the business itself. Working on the business is the high-leverage stuff. Strategic planning, learning new investment models, designing marketing systems, refining your processes, building your team. That's what actually scales things.
And how often do you need this? 3 hours sounds like a lot for a busy agent.
Generally, 1 solid 3-hour block per week is enough to make real progress. The key is scheduling it when you're least likely to be interrupted, maybe like Tuesday morning before 10 a.m. or whenever your quiet time is. Protect that time fiercely. It's where you architect the future of your business.
Okay, strategic blocks. What about the other 2? Buffer blocks.
Buffer blocks are crucial for protecting your strategic time. This is scheduled time specifically for dealing with the inevitable admin and chaos that would otherwise bleed into your high-value time.
So processing emails, returning non-urgent calls, paying bills, that kind of stuff.
Exactly. You batch it. Handle all that necessary but low-level stuff during these buffer blocks so it doesn't derail your client appointments or, even worse, your strategic thinking time.
Makes sense. And the last one, breakout blocks. Sounds more creative.
That's a good way to put it. Breakout blocks are for stepping back entirely, for deep thinking, long-term planning, pure learning, maybe even just recharging. This is when you might read that dense book on tax strategies, or really meditate on where your market's headed in 5 years, or sketch out what your ideal team looks like. It's unstructured time to feed your expertise and vision.
Beyond just blocking time, there's this idea of process control using routines, like athletes do.
Yeah, think about it. A pro golfer has that exact same pre-shot routine every single time, right?
Mm-hmm.
A basketball player has their free throw ritual. It's about ensuring consistency and peak performance, especially under pressure. Why shouldn't real estate pros do the same for their key activities?
Like a listing appointment or a major negotiation.
Precisely. Develop a pre-activity routine, a checklist even. for that listing presentation. What materials do I need? What's my mindset? What are the key points I absolutely have to cover? In what order? That routine builds consistency and minimizes errors, even on days you feel off.
And what about when your internal drive just isn't there? That's where accountability comes in.
Absolutely. Let's be real, sometimes you just don't feel like making those follow-up calls or analyzing that deal. Accountability, whether it's a coach, a mastermind group, a mentor, provides that external structure, that leverage to push you to take action, especially on the important but uncomfortable tasks.
So the ultimate goal of all this systemization, it isn't just about making the agent's life less chaotic, is it?
No, it's about building a business, something predictable, scalable, something that eventually runs without your constant hands-on intervention every minute. And the sources suggest one of the best ways to actually get these systems built: hire someone.
Hire someone just to document your processes. Seems like an expense.
It can feel like it initially, but think long-term. The goal is to create, essentially, a little money machine, right? A turnkey operation that works reliably and maybe even better than anyone else's in your market. Hiring someone skilled in process documentation allows them to observe what you do best, write it down clearly, standardize it, and then maybe even help implement it or train others.
Which frees you, the principal agent or investor, up to focus purely on the highest value activities again.
Exactly. Client relationships, finding deals, negotiating strategy, while the machine hums along in the background. That's the pivot. Moving from reacting in the chaos to intentionally building on the business. That educational shift is what unlocks real mastery.
Okay, let's shift gears now from operations to the pure investment strategy side. This is where that deep learning really starts generating wealth, right? If you're serious about owning assets, you need ways to scale. And that conversation pretty much has to include the BRRRR method.
Oh, absolutely. BRRRR, buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat. It's like the cornerstone strategy for anyone looking to scale their portfolio relatively quickly. Why? Because it tackles the biggest bottleneck for most investors: running out of capital.
Explain that. In a typical buy and hold, your down payment is just stuck, right?
Exactly. You put down, say, $50,000 on a property. That money is now locked up in the equity of that one house for potentially years. BRRR is designed to get that capital back relatively quickly so you can use it again. It leverages debt and forced depreciation.
Okay, walk us through the steps. How does it actually work?
All right. First, you buy the property. Often this means finding something below market value, maybe distressed, possibly using cash or hard money initially to make the purchase fast. Then you rehab it, you fix it up strategically to increase its value significantly.
Forcing the appreciation.
Precisely. Next, you rent it out. You place a good, qualified tenant to stabilize the property and generate income. Then comes the crucial step. You refinance. You go to a traditional lender and get a new loan based on the property's new, much higher after repair value, the ARV.
And this is where the magic happens. If you've done it right, the new loan pays off your initial purchase and rehab costs.
That's the goal. Ideally, the refinance gives you back 100% of the capital you initially invested your purchase price, plus all those rehab costs. Sometimes even more, though usually you might leave a little bit of cash in the deal.
But essentially, you've pulled most, if not all, of your original investment back out.
Exactly. And that is the engine for scaling. Think about it. Traditional model. Your $50 is tied up. Maybe you wait 5-10 years for appreciation and principal paydown to free up enough equity for the next down payment. With BRRR, you get your capital back often within months, and you can immediately go repeat the process, buy another property.
So you own property, #1, it's cash flowing, paying down its own debt, and your original chunk of cash is back in your bank account, ready for property #2.
Right. The compounding effect over time is massive compared to passively waiting. You're acquiring assets much, much faster.
Let's put some simple numbers on it, maybe.
Okay, quick hypothetical. You buy a fixer-upper for $100,000. You spend $30,000 on the rehab. Total cash invested, $130,000. After the work is done and you've got a tenant, it appraises for $180,000. A lender might give you, say, 75% of that ARV in a cash-out refinance.
So 75% of $180,000 is?
$135,000.
Right. So you get a loan for $135,000. You use that to pay off any short-term financing and reimburse yourself for the $130,000 you put in. You've now got all your original capital back, plus maybe a little extra, and you own a cash-flowing rental property with built-in equity.
And your return on the cash you left in the deal, which is basically zero or negative in this case, is essentially infinite.
Exactly. That's the power. If you leave, say, $5,000, $10,000 in the deal, your cash-on-cash return on that small remaining amount can be astronomical because the tenant is paying the debt and you got most of your capital back to reuse. And the core financial logic is borrowing relatively cheap money from the bank, maybe at 5, 6, 7% interest these days, and deploying it into an asset that's expected to yield much higher returns, maybe 15% or more, plus the appreciation and tax benefits.
Yeah. And the sources even mention seasoned investors consider a BRRR deal where they only get like 70% or 80% of their capital back a bad deal, but still worth doing because it allows them to keep acquiring assets. It's a velocity of capital strategy.
It reframes the goal from just maximizing cash flow on one property to maximizing portfolio growth.
Absolutely. Now, obviously, BRRRR isn't easy. Finding the right deals, managing rehabs, financing, it requires significant education and skill. Which brings us to how you quickly filter potential deals. You need rules of thumb. The big one is the 50% rule.
Okay, the 50% rule, what's that about?
It's a quick way to estimate a property's potential cash flow before the mortgage payment. The rule states that, on average, about 50% of your gross rental income will likely be eaten up by operating expenses.
And operating expenses are everything except the loan.
Correct. This includes property taxes, insurance, vacancy reserves, money set aside for when it's empty, repairs and maintenance, property management fees if you use them, maybe some utilities. So if a place rents for $2,000 a month, the 50% rule suggests you should budget roughly $1,000 a month for these operating costs.
Leaving you $1,000 as your net operating income, or NOI, and that's the money you have available to pay the mortgage principal and interest, with anything left over being your cash flow.
Precisely. It's a quick sanity check.
But hang on, does that rule really hold up everywhere? I mean, property taxes in New Jersey or California are way different than in, say, Indiana. Insurance in Florida is sky high. Isn't 50% too simplistic?
That's a fair challenge. And you're right, it is a simplification. It's a starting point, a filter. It works best as an average across a diverse portfolio over time. If you're investing in a known high-expense area, maybe adjust your personal rule. Maybe it's the 55% or 60% rule for you. But the principle is crucial. Don't just look at gross rent and subtract the mortgage. You have to account for all those other costs, and 50% is a decent, quick estimate to see if a deal is even worth digging into deeper.
Okay, so it forces realism.
Yeah.
Now, what about the flip side, the 2% rule? This one sounds great at first glance, but apparently makes experienced investors nervous.
Yeah, the 2% rule flags properties where the monthly rent is around 2% of the purchase price. So a $100,000 house renting for $2,000 a month looks amazing on paper, right? Huge cash flow potential relative to the cost.
What's the catch? Why the caution?
Because markets are usually pretty efficient. If a property offers that high a rent-to-price ratio, it almost always means it's in a very challenging, high-risk area. Think high crime, extreme tenant turnover, constant repairs, difficulty collecting rent, maybe significant blight nearby.
Ah, so the high potential return comes with equally high potential headaches and risk.
Exactly. One source calls these areas swamps. Trying to make easy money there often means you end up buying yourself a stressful, full-time job managing problems, not a passive investment. Experienced investors tend to prefer slightly lower returns in more stable, predictable areas, Class B neighborhoods, often. They value consistency over chasing those super high but often illusory returns in really rough areas.
Yeah, okay. Shifting to tactical stuff, adding value during the rehab. There's a specific hack mentioned for boosting ARV pretty cheaply.
Yeah, the classic bedroom conversion. This is huge for flippers and BRRR investors. You look for wasted space in a property, maybe an oversized formal dining room nobody uses anymore, a den, or even just a really large living room in, say, a 2-bedroom house.
And you convert that space into another bedroom.
Right. Often, all it takes is adding a closet, putting up some drywall, maybe adding a door. For a few $1,000s in materials and labor, you can potentially turn a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house into a 3-bedroom, 1-bath house.
And that third bedroom significantly bumps up the property's value and appeal in the market, right?
Yeah.
Even if the square footage hasn't changed.
Dramatically. In most markets, a 3-bedroom home is in a completely different, higher value category than a 2-bedroom. It appeals to a much broader range of buyers and renters, especially families. It's often one of the highest ROI improvements you can make.
Smart. Now, speaking of finding deals, foreclosures often come up. But the sources caution that this isn't a game for beginners.
Definitely not. Buying foreclosures, short sales, tax liens, it sounds appealing because you might get a discount, but it's a highly competitive space. You're not just bidding against other newbies. You're up against seasoned professionals, investment funds, attorneys who specialize in this. They know the legal nuances, the bidding strategies, the pitfalls.
So you really need specialized knowledge, probably significant cash reserves, and good legal counsel to play in that sandbox successfully.
Absolutely. It's advanced level stuff, not where you typically start.
Okay, one last piece on the advanced tactics. Negotiation and presentation, especially in residential deals where emotions are high.
Yeah, this is crucial. If you're negotiating to buy someone's family home, the sources strongly suggest trying not to do the final hard negotiation in their living room.
Why not?
Because the home environment is full of emotional triggers and distractions, kids running around, pets, photos on the wall, maybe nosy neighbors popping by. It makes it harder for both sides to stay focused on the business transaction. It's easier for sellers to get defensive or retreat into sentimentality. A neutral location, like an office, is usually better.
But what if you have to negotiate in the home?
Then you need to try and control the environment as much as possible. There's that anecdote about the assertive buyer.
Right, the one who'd literally pull the for sale sign out of the yard.
Yeah. He'd walk it to the curb, come inside, politely ask to turn off the TV, maybe even take the phone off the hook. It sounds aggressive, but it was about setting a frame, signaling, okay, we're here to do serious business now. Reducing those distractions helps keep things focused.
And this idea of controlling the presentation applies equally when selling, especially with staging. The agent plays a key role here.
Huge role. The agent needs to pinpoint the target buyer for the property and use comparable sales data, the comps, to justify the staging choices and the pricing strategy to the seller.
But sellers often resist staging, right? They're attached to their stuff.
Very attached. So the agent has to guide them through that psychological shift. The sources call staging the seller's emotional moving day. It's the point where they have to stop thinking of it as their beloved home and start thinking of it as a product that needs to be packaged effectively to appeal to the widest possible audience and command the highest price.
Which means depersonalizing, taking the you out of the house.
Exactly. Removing family photos, quirky collections, specific paint colors, making it neutral, clean, aspirational. The agent's job is to gently but firmly help the seller make that mental leap from homeowner to business person selling an asset. That's expert guidance. And that framing, being the guide, really leads us to the modern role of the expert agent or investor. It's a shift away from trying to be the hero.
Right. Customers aren't really looking for another hero figure,
Yeah.
the person who just swoops in and fixes everything single-handedly.
No, they're looking for a guide. It's like in the movies, right? Luke Skywalker has Yoda. Frodo has Gandalf. The hero is the client facing their challenge.
And the professional, the agent, the investor is the wise guide who encourages the hero, gives them the tools and knowledge they need, lights the path, but ultimately empowers the client to win the day.
That's the model. And in a world where you can find almost any piece of data online, what's the guide's unique advantage? The sources say it's empathy.
The internet can give you comps, but it can't really understand your stress about moving.
Exactly. Data isn't empathetic. A great agent or advisor listens. They respond thoughtfully. They recognize that buying or selling a home or making a big investment decision is stressful and emotional. It's not just about spitting back automated info, it's about connection. Maybe suggesting something practical to ease the client's anxiety or just genuinely acknowledging the pressure they're under. That's the human element, the guide's touch, that technology can't replicate.
Building that relationship, that trust, hinges on consistency, doesn't it? Which brings up the famous follow-up rule.
Oh, yeah. The rule is basically never expect people to get back to you. You, the professional, have to own the follow-up.
And the guideline is,
Follow up until you get a clear yes or. Well, until you read their obituary. It sounds extreme, but it emphasizes relentless consistency. That persistence is often what separates the top performers from everyone else. It shows you're serious and reliable.
follow-up is the start, but follow-through is just as critical, doing what you promised.
Absolutely. Your word has to be gold. Remembering that clients are long-term relationships, not just transactions. That integrity builds the foundation for referrals and repeat business.
Now, for investors aiming to scale, this relationship building extends beyond clients to building a strategic network, specifically for finding deals.
Yes. Millionaire investors, the sources show, don't just stumble upon great off-market deals. They intentionally cultivate a network of people who are likely to encounter motivated sellers.
Who are these people? It's not just random networking, right?
No, it's very targeted. They focus on professionals whose work regularly intersects with life events that often force a property sale. Think divorce attorneys, probate lawyers dealing with inherited properties, bankruptcy specialists, sometimes even folks like morticians or funeral home directors.
Why those specific professions?
Because they're dealing with situations, death, divorce, financial distress, where people often need to sell a property quickly and discreetly. Maybe not for top dollar, but for speed and certainty. These aren't typically sellers testing the market. They're sellers who need a solution fast.
So the key is building relationships with these sources and consistently reminding them you're a buyer who can close quickly.
Exactly. Regular, systematic follow-up with that strategic network is crucial for getting those calls before a property hits the open market. That's where many of the best deals are found.
Okay, one final crucial team member, especially for scaling investors: property management. Choosing the right manager is almost an education in itself.
It really is. If you're hiring a professional management company, you need to do serious homework. Check their local reputation, talk to their current clients, but also dig into their vendor relationships.
Why vendor relationships?
Because a good established management company often has long-standing contracts with plumbers, electricians, HVAC techs, landscapers. They get volume discounts. That means they can often handle repairs and maintenance cheaper than you could on your own, which directly impacts your bottom line.
And their market knowledge for setting rents is key too.
Definitely. Now, the alternative some investors prefer is a resident manager.
Someone who lives on site.
Right. This is often less expensive than a full-service company, and it gives the investor more direct oversight and control, potentially. The downside is you're managing the manager.
But either way, good pro company or good resident manager, the goal is the same, isn't it?
Yeah, it's to free you up, to delegate the day-to-day operational headaches, the tenant calls, the leaky faucets, the rent collection, so you can focus your energy back on working on the business, finding the next deal, refining your strategy, managing your capital, not getting bogged down in the weeds of property operations. #tag outro.
So let's tie this all together, back to that core mission. This deep dive was really about how that commitment to continuous education isn't just about being a better agent. It's about transforming your financial future, building real wealth.
Right. It starts with that mindset shift, getting beyond just the license to developing real financial aptitude, learning how money works, how to make it work for you. Then taking control, operationally planning intentionally, using structures like the 12-week year with those dedicated time blocks. And we saw the power of specific investment knowledge. Strategies like BRRRR aren't just fancy acronyms. They're systems for recycling capital and scaling quickly. And using simple but effective filters, like the 50% rule, to analyze deals efficiently, balancing that speed with necessary caution.
And underpinning it all is the human element. Shifting your role from hero to guide, using empathy as your differentiator, building trust through relentless follow-up and follow-through, and strategically cultivating that network that brings opportunities to you.
Exactly. So the final thought we want to leave you with, something that really comes through in the philosophical side of these sources, it's this. The biggest factor determining your quality of life isn't actually what you have right now, it's who you are becoming.
And how does that relate?
Because what you are doing day in and day out directly shapes who you are becoming.
So that consistent, maybe small daily action of deliberately improving your knowledge, your skills, not because you have to for CE credits, but because you choose to pursue mastery.
That's the difference maker. That's what separates achieving that extraordinary life you envision from just letting it pass you by. It's about choosing growth, choosing to become that black belt.
Start that educational journey today. Keep learning, keep growing. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.